The options and recommendations expressed by Kyle Wool are his and his alone and may not represent Revere Securities as a whole.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Now, up next, we have Kyle Wool, president of Revere Wealth Management. Now, Kyle's group basically manages and preserves wealth for wealthy families. But he's also extremely knowledgeable with investment banking and managing portfolios. So even if you don't have enough to invest with him, you definitely want to listen to some of his advice and commentary. Another reason Kyle is so great is because he's active with so many charities involving, are you ready? Children. And of course, as a mom, that's my soft spot. He sits on so many boards, which makes him a magnet to investors. I'll let him get into all of those details with you. But wait, he's also an entrepreneur with a sweet spot for all things Greek. He's a partner at Isouvlaki and a partner at Merakia, an award-winning Greek steakhouse in the Flatiron District here in NYC. I'm excited to announce that he's also going to be appearing regularly on The Moment of Zen, delivering a weekly business report to our listeners and viewers. Wow, that was a long intro. Here to break it all down for us on the business side, we have Kyle Wool. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Thank you very much, Zen. It's an honor to be on your show.
All right, Kyle, we're going to dive right into this. All right, we've seen the latest business headlines and the growing concern about Biden's handling of the economy. Now, the GDP growth rate shows Biden's spending plans will basically overstimulate the economy. And the Commerce Department released their estimate for economic growth in the first quarter of this year. The GDP increased by an annual rate of 6.4%. Okay, that means since May 1st of last year, the economy has rapidly recovered. Now, here's my question to you, Kyle. Right, with even higher growth numbers in the coming months and with inflation increasing, it's evident that no more stimulus is really needed. Is this in fact counterproductive, if I'm understanding this properly?
I believe it's very counterproductive, and it's almost like the administration's talking out of both sides of their head at the moment. On one side, you have Janet Yellen Friday trying to calm the markets down, saying, oh, everything's okay. These are backward-looking numbers. Leisure and hospitality has not even begun to go back to work yet, and unemployment may not really be as bad as we're looking at. But then, on the other side, you have the administration saying we need another $1.9 trillion in infrastructure after the 1.9 trillion we already put in the quote unquote COVID relief bill. So I think as we continue to print, forget about 6% GDP, you could see an 8 to 10% GDP number. And what's the problem with that? Sure, there will be an economic boom, but it will be followed by massive inflation and maybe even worse, stagnation.
This deficit spending could basically hand Congress to the Republicans. And like after what you just said, this 1.9 trillion American recovery, the act soared at 75% public approval. I guess people fell into a pipe dream that's full of goodies because it's basically for state budgets, union pensions, universities, but yet little to do with the pandemic. So the Recovery Act for his working families is what he's really pushing. That's his Build Back Better, right? The BBB. It's his Economic Recovery Act for families. But is all this deficit spending a good idea?
I think it's far from a good idea. I think at the end of the day, if you create inflation, like we had back in 1981 when we had Chairman Volcker, and the only way they could break inflation was to raise interest rates. And we had 13% inflation. And if you and I probably barely remember, but our parents' generation remember getting 18% mortgages back then. Now, how does that affect the regular American voter, the regular blue-collar American worker? What's going to happen? Their home loans are going to go higher. Their auto loans are going to go higher. Their student loans will go higher. And their credit card bills, which are monthly for most people that live month to month, will go much higher. And I think that will be devastating.
Wow, there has to be a light at the end of the tunnel here. I mean, look, it sounds all worse than it could possibly be, but when you look at it from a business perspective, in a recent report I just read over the weekend that the Fed is just continuing to purchase between 80 billion and 100 billion worth of government bonds monthly. So they're just printing more and more money, and they're saying that this is going to continue. Now, if we couple this with Biden's deficit spending, which will be mostly financed by selling bonds basically to the public, which then reduces capital available to businesses, we are headed down a deep dark hole. What do you think they should be doing instead? Because this is not the approach that you would take. I think if the Trump administration, this is not the approach they would have taken. Where do you see this going?
Well, I think if you go back to what the Trump administration did during the pandemic, right? The policies before the pandemic, before the COVID-19 started over 13, 14 months ago, were great. The economy was ready to take off. We had deregulation. Job growth was through the roof on all different aspects. Women, men, minorities across the board. But once the pandemic happened, the Trump administration stepped in and added money into the American consumer's pocket. I understand that. I understand Biden just put another $1.9 trillion out there for another COVID stimulus. Did we need that or don't we need that? I don't even think we needed all that. So if we look at that, what do I think the answer is? I think let the economy open. I think there's enough money out there. I think a lot of people got a tremendous amount of money, whether they needed it or were not affected by the pandemic. They have that money. They're going to spend that money. Biden's going to spend that money. I think maybe we should hold back a little bit and let the economy open up so we don't overheat this economy, which will, again, lead into inflation. Now, what are the four biggest causes of inflation? Rising energy prices. We see it every day. I'm sure you've been filling up at the pump. Energy prices are going up. Now, is that because of the reopening? Yes, but it's also because of the war on fossil fuels that we have right now. I think we're adding too much money. And going back to what you were talking about a second ago, Zen, we spend $3 trillion more than we take in every year. And then if you look at how we finance that, we finance it with $30 trillion of bond purchases. Only $24 trillion are from the public. The other $6 trillion are from the Fed buying its own bonds. Where does that money come from? They print that money. These are all recipes for inflation, but I don't think it has to happen if we can just pull back a little bit on this outrageous government spending.
It sounds as if they don't have a really good grip on reality when it comes to getting the economy back up and running. They're incentivizing a lot of people to just basically stay home and not work. They're paving the way for a very sheepish kind of recovery, in the sense that they're appealing to a demographic that I feel could be a little bit lazier than what we would like to see in an economy where everybody's supposed to be incentivized to get back to work now that the vaccine has rolled out, now that the unions should really kind of be putting their hands down and saying, okay, let's get the kids back to school. But here in the tri-state area, with really strong teachers unions and poor leadership, it's a slow start. It's not like what we're seeing in Miami. It's not like what we're seeing in Texas. Those are very differently run states, if you will. In a quick, we have about 4 minutes left here, and I want to let the audience kind of, I want to let them in into what your specialty is. What is the best advice that you could give somebody who has a little bit of money to invest, not a lot, and they want to start to really get their feet wet with investments across the board? What can you give? What advice can you give over there?
Well, I think a very important thing for any investor, whether they have $10,000 or they have 10 million plus in the market, is to always invest prudently, never over leverage, always put money away on a monthly basis, and try to structure your investments in a very tax efficient manner. So, for example, one of the big conversations right now is, are they going to raise the capital gains tax? Now, that is big when you look at your actual net returns. It's not what you make. It's what you actually keep. So these are the things we really have to look at. Not only investing, not leveraging yourself, but doing it in a very tax efficient manner to retain as much as possible. Because as you know, Zen, it's not what you make, it's what you keep.
It's definitely what you keep. And Biden wants to raise the capital gains tax, and wants to raise the corporate tax rate, and raise the highest personal income tax rate. And those three actions alone are going to dramatically reduce capital formation and contribute to a capital shortage. Can you explain the logic behind this? What should they be doing instead?
In a different world, I could explain the logic, but there is no logic behind it, Zen. So you have to understand, when you raise the corporate rate and you raise the capital gains tax on corporations, you are basically telling that corporation not to spend more money on machinery, not to hire more people. And who does that affect the most? It affects the blue collar person. It affects the middle class voter. It affects the person that maybe they will hire one less person. Maybe they'll lay off one less person. Maybe they're not going to start another project. So that's the real definition, in my opinion, of raising taxes is corporations will not spend more going forward, and it'll affect the average voter and the average middle class earner.
Wow, you have such a good grip on things that, number one, let's tell our listeners, Revere Securities, you guys are based here in New York City. Tell us a little bit about Revere Securities and how we can go to the website and follow you and learn more about what you guys do.
Absolutely. Revere Securities, we're at 650 Fifth Avenue. That's our global headquarters. We also have offices in Boston, Ohio, Boca Raton, and a new office in West Palm Beach. Basically, you can go to our website, www.reveresecurities.com. You can see all about our different aspects. You can see our history. We've been around since 1982. You can see that we have a robust wealth management platform. We also have a robust investment banking platform. We actually led 2 initial public offerings in the last 30 days. And I think you'll see our name on a lot more tombstones and IPOs and other transactions coming forward. So we hope that you guys follow us and participate. And we look forward to, if anyone wants to reach out to us, to working together.
Amazing. Well, you're going to be a regular of the show delivering the business report, so we're going to be hearing from you often. And I thank you so much for your time and for your incredible insight and knowledge when it comes to the market and business. It's always a pleasure talking with you, Kyle. So I thank you for your time.
And I thank you, Zen, for giving us the opportunity to be on this great show.
Absolutely. You guys are listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. We'll be right back after this.